Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me introduce myself. My name is Akbar Pratama from 2A class in English Literature Department. So today I would like to tell you about the story, and the title is The Crow Wins. So I will read this story and then I hope you enjoy my video. The Crow Wins. Some 400 years ago, the great Swiss physician and alchemist Paracelsus stated, "He who knows the origin of the winds, of the thunder, and of the weather also knows where diseases come from." He could have added, "and why weather-sensitive people shudder when the winds blow, for they do." Some winds cannot put weather-sensitive people through every agony known to biometeorology. In effect, these some winds can also affect people who usually are not weather sensitive. Winds blow hot and cold, and it's toss up which is worse. Statistics show that when cold polar winds sweep down on the land, there is an increase in the number of heart attacks. Anginal pain gets worse and blood pressure shuts up because the heart must work harder to keep the body warm. Psychological tests given while hot winds were blowing have turned up some good news and some bad news about the relations among winds, personality, and ability. The bad news first: hot winds make people more neurotic and irritable, and then they do worse on the unintelligent test. They cannot understand mechanical instruction as well as they can in cooler weather. The good news: hot winds won't keep you from doing your best in math and theoretical work, nor will they affect your visual perception. Some winds are lovely, cool, and refreshing poets winds, warm west winds. But others are terrible, veritable monsters. European is one of these. In medieval times, people took the phone blew in from Phoenicia, and they named it the Phoenicians. Then certain that the phone this hot dry terror is deadly not only in the biometeorological sense but in the physical sense as well. It blows in from Italy loaded with wet humid air, drop its moisture on the Swiss Alps, and then warm and dry sweeps down into the northern reaches of the land. As it blows, it warms the mountain snow and causes avalanches. Albert is a resident of Bettos, a town in Germany in the foothills of the Alps. I talked to him about the fan, and he shook his head. Sadly, some reporter from Munich came here a few years ago to talk about the fan, and they told us it was all in our heads, but they didn't understand. They weren't here while it was blowing. Everyone in the village was upset. You could not talk to your neighbor, or if you did, you snapped at him. We were all on edge. Every night while the fan was blowing, I'd have trouble sleeping the nightmares, and I wake up with a headache. My sister, she hemorrhaged the day before it started. It seems to go on forever, day after day. It's so dry, you sweat, and the sweat is just pulled out of you by the wind. We were all thirsty. My God, the beer was constant. How does it start? I asked. It starts with warm air over the cold ground. At first, it's wet before the real blowing begins, and it comes, it goes on for weeks. In our street, there was one suicide, and I put it down to the devil wind. And it's not only sickness and upset. My cousin, who works in factory in Munich, told me there were more accidents during the weeks of the film than for months and months before or after. Albert's report had the ring of a truth, and I had additional scientific confirmation of the fun deadly quality from other sources. A, psych, a, psych, a psychiatrist told me that in mental institutions there were almost one quarter more patients with problems when the phone stopped, and intimates and another Alpine town told me that he had at least one third more complaints during phone dates. Why the phone affects people is still not clear. Some researchers believe the hot dry wind creates an enormous number of positive ions because of the friction it descends down the aisles. Positive ions have been held to be the cause of many upset, and Dr. W. Morikover tried to test this with ion testing apparatus. He reported, however, that he could not duplicate the fan action. Other researchers feel that certain people have a nervous system particularly vulnerable to hot, dry winds that in fact these are our weather sensitive people. Other European winds are hard on the people in the past. The warm, dry autumn blows along the Rhone Valley in France, and it is accompanied by low pressure systems. Babies are usually the first to react. They run high temperatures and suffer dehydration, become restless and cannot sleep. Some children don't do well in school when the autumn blows, and others suffer respiratory troubles, colds, and asthma. Weather sensitive adults react strongly to the autumn, almost as strongly as they do the faint queries, insomnia, heart attacks, and migraines are typically autumn symptoms. The mistral is another Rhone Valley wind, but unlike the autumn, it is cold and dry. This strong wind, however, is still ugly in its effects. Like the fun, the mistral causes migraine and insomnia and is dreaded by weather sensitive. There are other killer winds around the world. In Africa and Asia, the summons are hot, dry, desert winds. In India, there is the Pud. In the Mediterranean, countries, is the Sirocco, and in Spain, the Solano, and so its blows are through Europe, Asia, and even Australia, where they have the brick fielder. This wind earned its colorful name by blowing clouds of dust from the brick fields. After a while, it was renamed the Southerly Buster. Israel has its own killer wind, the Saraf. It is hit up by the desert sands and it brings with it this depression, headache, irritation, and respiratory upset. Here in America, we have few natural deadly winds, perhaps because of the geography of our country. Winds on the Pacific Northwest coast blow wet against the Rockies, then dry and sometimes hot down and landward side. The Chinook is one such, and it causes almost as many problems as its European cousin, the point. In Southern California, the Santa Ana wind has a deadly reputation when it blows across Los Angeles. Its heat and dryness seems to cause an enormous increase in crime. Many winds are given names to personify them, and perhaps as an ancient way of classifying them, you can plead with a name object, wind, or mountain or storm god, and you can ask if it to spare you. To chin up was named after an Indian tribe, and in the United States we name our hurricanes. But the old practice of giving the woman's name has been replaced after protests by naming them ultimately for men and women. Hurricanes are killer winds, but the destructive power lies in the cycle damage they can do. They will leave houses, turn over cars, and destroy entire communities. We respect them for this, but we may have winds that are just as dangerous, and for some even more dangerous, because they are gentle winds or soft winds. We ignore them. Dr. H.B. Scholes studied the disposal of agricultural waste in Northern California and found that the monsoon-like inflow of oceanic air cleaned the air over the nearby cities. However, in the world, when 1.5 million tons of rice straw have to be burned for pest control. These same winds can blow the burning pollutants over the nearby cities. This cleansing wind they becomes a deadly one. In Colorado, there is a vast nuclear installation at Rocky Flats. A gentle wind blows from Rocky Flats towards Denver and an area near the city in the path of the wind has recorded twice as many cases of leukemia and lung cancer as one would normally expect. Here, another harmless wind has been turned into a killer by your own efforts. When nature fails to provide us with the winds like the fan and mistral, we seem to create our own. That's the end from the story. I hope you enjoy my video. Thank you for watching and listening. Akhirul kalam. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.